Part 3. 10 minutes later, Ralph was standing at the front of the Rite Aid pharmacy and looking at a sign which hung on chains from the ceiling. Feel better at Rite Aid, it said, seeming to suggest that feeling better was a goal attainable by any reasonable, hard-working consumer. Ralph had his doubts about that. This, Ralph decided, was retail drug dealing on a grand scale. It made the Rexall, where he usually traded, look like a tenement apartment by comparison. The fluorescent-lit aisles seemed as long as bowling alleys and displayed everything from toaster ovens to jigsaw puzzles. After a little study, Ralph decided that aisle 3 contained most of the patent medicines and was probably his best bet. He made his way very slowly through the area marked stomach remedies, sojourned briefly in the kingdom of analgesics, and quickly crossed the land of laxatives. And there, between laxatives and decongestants, he stopped. This is it, folks, my last shot. After this, there's only Dr. Litchfield, and if he suggests chewing honeycomb or drinking chamomile tea, I'll probably snap, and it'll take both nurses and the receptionist to pull me off him. Sleeping aids. The sign over this section of aisle 3 read. Ralph, never much of a patent medicine user, he would otherwise have arrived here much sooner, no doubt. Didn't know exactly what he had expected, but it surely had not been this wild, almost indecent profusion of products. His eyes slipped across the boxes, the majority were a soothing blue, reading the names. Most seemed strange and slightly ominous. Compose, Nitol, Sleepinol, Z-Power, Sominex, Sleepinex, Drowsy. There was even a generic brand. You have to be kidding, he thought. None of these things are going to work for you. It's time to quit fucking around. Don't you know that? When you start to see colored footprints in the sidewalk, it's time to quit fucking around and go to the doctor. But on the heels of this, he heard Dr. Litchfield. You heard him so clearly as if it was a tape recorder turned on in the middle of his head. Your wife is suffering from tension headaches, Ralph. Unpleasant and painful, but not life-threatening. I think we can take care of the problem. Unpleasant and painful, but not life-threatening. Yes, right. That was what the man had said, and then he reached for his prescription pad and written out the order for the first bunch of useless pills, while the tiny clump of alien cells in Carolyn's head continued to send out its microbursts of destruction. And maybe Dr. Jamal had been right. Maybe it was too late even then. But maybe Jamal was full of shit. Maybe Jamal was just a stranger in a strange land trying to get along, trying to make waves. Maybe this and maybe that. Ralph didn't know for sure and never would. All he really knew was that Litchfield hadn't been around when the final 2 tasks of their marriage had been set before them. Her job to die, his job to watch her do it. Is that what I want to do? Go to Litchfield and watch him reach for his prescription pad again? Maybe this time it will work, he argued with himself. At the same time, his hand stole out, seemingly on its own volition, and took a box of Sleepinex from the shelf. He turned it over, held it slightly away from his eyes so he could read the small print on the side panel, and ran his eyes slowly down the list of active ingredients. He had no idea of how to pronounce the jaw-breaking words, and even less of what they were or how they were supposed to help you sleep. Yes, he answered the voice. Maybe this time it would work, but maybe the real answer would be just to find another help you? A voice was directly behind Ralph's shoulder. He was in the act of returning the Sleepinex to its place, meaning to take something that sounded a little less like a sinister drug in a Robin Cook novel when the voice spoke. Ralph jumped and knocked a dozen assorted boxes of synthetic sleep on the floor. Oh, sorry, clumsy, Ralph said and looked over his shoulder. Not at all. My fault entirely. And before Ralph could do more than pick up 2 boxes of Sleepinex and 1 box of drowsy gel capsules, the man in the white smock who had spoken to him had swept up the rest and was redistributing them with the speed of a riverboat gambler dealing a hand of poker. According to the gold ID board pinned to his chest, this was Joe Weiser, Wise Aid pharmacist. Now, Weiser said, dusting his hands off and returning to Ralph with a friendly grin. Let's start over. Can I help you? You look a little lost. Ralph's initial response, annoyance at being disturbed while having a deep and meaningful conversation with himself, was being replaced with guarded interest. Well, I don't know, he said and gestured to the array of sleeping potions. Do any of these actually work? Weiser's grin widened. He was a tall, middle-aged man with fair skin and thinning brown hair, which he parted in the middle. He stuck out his hand, and Ralph barely began the polite reciprocatory gesture when his own hand was swallowed. I'm Joe, the pharmacist said, and tapped the gold tunic pin with his free hand. I used to be Joe Wise, but now I'm older and wiser. This was almost certainly an ancient joke, but it had lost none of its savor for Joe, who laughed uproariously. Ralph smiled a polite smile with just the smallest touch of anxiety around the edges. The hand which had folded his was clearly a strong one. He was afraid of the pharmacist's squeeze, so his hand might finish the day in a cast. He found himself wishing, at least momentarily, that he'd taken his problem to Paul Durgan downtown after all. The wise gave his hand 2 energetic pumps and let go. I'm Ralph Rabbit, sent to meet you, Dr. Weiser. Mutual. Now, concerning the efficacy of these fine products, let me answer you a question with one of my own. Does a bear ever shit in a telephone booth? Ralph burst out laughing, rarely, I think, when he could say anything again. Correct. And I rest my case. Weiser glanced at the sleeping aids, well done in shades of blue. Thank God I'm a pharmacist, not a salesman, Mr. Roberts. I'd start trying to peddle stuff door to door. Are you an insomniac? I'm asking partly because you're investigating the sleeping aids, but mostly because you have that lean and hollow-eyed look. Ralph said, Mr. Weiser, I'd be the happiest man on earth if I could get 5 hours sleep some night, and I'd settle for 4. How long has it been going on, Mr. Roberts? Who do you prefer, Ralph? Ralph's fine. Good, and I'm Joe. It started in April, I think, a month or 6 weeks after my wife died anyway. Gee, I'm sorry to hear you lost your wife. My sympathies. Thank you, Ralph said, then repeated the old formula. I missed her a lot, but I was glad her suffering was over. Except now you're suffering for... Let's see. Weiser counted quickly on his big fingers. Going on half a year now. Ralph suddenly found himself fascinated by those fingers. No jet contrails this time, but the tip of each finger appeared to be wrapped in a bright silvery haze. Like tinfoil you could somehow look right through. He suddenly found himself thinking of Caroline again, and remembering the phantom smell she had sometimes complained of last fall. Cloves, sewage, burning ham. Maybe this was the male equivalent and the onset of his own brain tumor that had been signaled by headaches. Not by headaches, but by insomnia. Self-diagnosis is a fool's game, Ralph, so why don't you quit it? He moved his eyes resolutely back to Weiser's big, pleasant face. No silvery haze there, not so much as a hint of a haze. He was almost sure of it. That's right, he said, going on half a year. Seems longer, a lot longer recently. Any noticeable pattern? There usually is, I mean. Do you toss and turn before you go to sleep, or I'm a premature waker? Wise's eyebrows went up. And read a book or 3 about the problem, too, I deduce. If Litchfield had made a remark of this sort, Ralph would have read condescension into it. From Joe Weiser he sensed not condescension but genuine admiration. I read what the library had, but there wasn't much, and none of it has helped much. Ralph paused, then added, The truth is, none of it has helped at all. Well, let me tell you what I know on the subject, and you just kind of flop your hand when I start heading into territory you've already explored. Who's your doctor anyway? Litchfield. Uh-huh. And usually trade at where? The People's Drug out at the mall? The Rexall downtown? The Rexall. You're incognito today, I take it. Ralph blushed and grinned. Yes, something like that. Uh-huh. And I don't need to ask if you've been to see Litchfield about your problem, do you? If I had, you wouldn't be exploring the wonderful world of patent medicines. Is that what these are? Patent medicines? Put it this way. I'd feel a hell of a lot more comfortable selling most of this crap off the back of a big red wagon with fancy yellow wheels. Ralph laughed, and the bright silvery cloud which had been gathering in front of Joe's Weiser tunic blew away when he did. That kind of salesmanship I may be able to get into, Weiser said with a misty little grin. I get a sweet little honey bun to do a dance in a sequin bra and a pair of harem pants. Call her Little Egypt, like in that old Coaster song. She'd be my warm-up act. Plus, I have a banjo picker. In my experience, there's nothing like a good dose of banjo music to get people into a buying mood. Weiser looked put. looked off past accidental Jesus, enjoying the scanty daydream. Then he looked back at Ralph. For a premature waker like you, Ralph, this stuff's entirely useless. You'd be better off with a shot of booze and one of those wave machines they sell through the catalogs. And looking at you, I guess you probably tried them both. Yes, along with about 2 other dozen old-timer rusted home remedies. Ralph laughed again. It was coming like this guy a lot. Try 4 dozen and you'll be in the borrowed park. Well, you're an industrious bugger, I'll give you that. Weiser said and waved a hand at the blue boxes. These things are nothing but antihistamines. Essentially, they're trading on a side effect. Antihistamines make people sleepy. Check out a box of Comtrix or Benadryl down there in decongestants, and it'll say you shouldn't take if you're going to be driving or operating heavy machinery. For people who suffer from occasional sleepiness, a Somnix every now and then may work. Gives them a nudge. But they won't work for you in this case. But your problem isn't getting to sleep, it's staying asleep. Correct? Correct. Can I ask you a dog question? Sure, I guess so. Do you have a problem with Dr. Litchfield regarding this? Maybe I have some doubts about his ability to understand how really pissy your insomnia is making you feel? Yes, Ralph said gratefully. Do you think I should go see him, try to explain that to him so I'll understand? To this question, Weiser would of course respond in the affirmative, and Ralph would finally make the call, and it should be Litchfield that he saw now. It was madness to think of hooking up with a new doctor at his age. Can you tell Dr. Litchfield you're seeing things? Can you tell him about the blue marks you saw shooting up from the tips of Lois Chassett's fingers? The footprints on the sidewalk? The footprints in an Arthur Murray dance diagram? The silvery stuff around the tips of Joe Wise's fingers? And you really gonna tell Litchfield that stuff? And if you're not, if you can't, why are you gonna see him in the first place? No matter what this guy recommends. Weiser, however, surprised him with going in an entirely different direction. Are you still dreaming? Yes, quite a lot, in fact, considering that I'm down to about 3 hours sleep a night. Are they coherent dreams? Dreams that consist of perceivable events and have some kind of narrative flow, no matter how kooky, or are they just jumbled images? Ralph remembered a dream he had the night before. He and Helen and Bill had been having a 3-sided game of frisbee in the middle of Harris Avenue. Helen had a pair of huge, clunky saddle shoes on her feet. McGovern was wearing a sweatshirt with a vodka bottle on it. Absolutely the best, the sweatshirt proclaimed. The frisbee had been bright red with fluorescent green stripes. Then Rosalie the dog had shown up. The famous blue bandana someone had hung around her neck was flapping as she limped towards them. All at once she had leaped into the air, snatched the frisbee, and gone running off with it in her mouth. Ralph wanted to give chase, but McGovern said, "Relax, Ralph. We're getting a whole bunch of them for Christmas." Ralph turned to him, intending to point out that Christmas was over 3 months away and to ask what the hell they were going to do if they wanted to play frisbee between now and then. But before he could, the dream had either ended or gone on to some other, less vivid mind movie. If I understand what you're saying, Ralph replied, my dreams are coherent. Good. I also want to know if they're lucid dreams. Lucid dreams fulfill 2 requirements. First, you know you're dreaming. Second, you can often influence the course the dream takes. You're more than just a passive observer. Ralph nodded. Sure, I have those. In fact, I seem to have a lot of them lately. I was just thinking of one I had last night. In it, the stray dog I see on the street from time to time ran out for the frisbee some friends of mine were playing with. I was mad that she broke up the game, and I tried to make her drop the frisbee just by sending her the thought of a sort of a telepathic command. You know? He uttered a small, embarrassed chuckle, but Wise only nodded matter of fact. Did it work? Not this time, Ralph said. But I think I have made that sort of thing work in other dreams, only I can't be sure, because most of the dreams I have seem to fade away almost as soon as I wake up. That's the case with everyone, Weiser said. The brain treats most dreams as disposable matter, storing them in extreme short-term memory. You know a lot about that, don't you? Insomnia interests me very much. I did 2 research papers on the link between dreams and sleep disorders when I was in college. Weiser glanced at his watch. It's my break time. Would you like to have a cup of coffee and a piece of apple pie with me? There's a place that's 2 doors down and the pie is fantastic. Sounds good, but maybe I'll get settled for an orange soda. Been trying to cut down on my coffee intake. Understandable, but completely useless. Roger said cheerfully. Caffeine is not the problem, Ralph. Nah, I suppose not. But what is? To this point, Ralph had been quite successful to keep the misery out of his voice, but now it crept back in. Weiser clapped on the shoulder and looked at him kindly. That, he said, is what we're going to talk about. Come on.